Welcome to Current Jobs. Today we'll be discussing what all was introduced in the budget by the Finance Minister and what are the important takeaways from the budget announcements. I am Ayush Agarwal, faculty at Manifest IAS. My email is ayush@manifestis.com. Now, one important thing which we are doing from these videos is giving you tips for the examination. So today's tip is where do candidates make mistakes in attempting economy questions. So I'll be answering this question in the end of the video. So because there are a lot of common things what people do and what is the common strategy. So it's important to know what are the important steps before or important things to keep in mind before answering the questions. Now coming to today's topic, which is the budget. So I'll be doing it in various themes such as ease of living, themes of the budget, aspirational India, agriculture, wellness, water and sanitation, education and skills, industry, commerce and investment, infrastructure, new economy as proposed by the budget, caring society, governance reforms, financial sector and financial markets, and lastly fiscal management and tax changes introduced in the budget.
Subscribe now and press the bell icon. Never miss an update.
Now coming to the first topic, which is ease of living. Now the budget is themed around ease of living broadly in the following sections. The first is seamless delivery of services using digital governance. As we know that Jan Dhan Aadhaar mobile has taken traction in the last 5 years. So government wants to deepen the digital engagement further by making available Swayam portal or we say telemedicine and expand the coverage of digital services offered to the citizens from their home itself, for such as Bharat broadband and fiber to the home, etc. Now coming to the second pillar, which is improving infrastructure or physical quality of life, which is through national infrastructure pipeline. See, as we know that there was a general slowdown in the Indian economy, and the government came up with a plan to spend 100 lakh crore in the next 5 years to give a stimulus to the economy, at the same time improve the physical quality of life. Physical here means physical infrastructure such as roads, electricity, water, etc. The third pillar is risk mitigation. Risk mitigation, as India is a country which is prone to disasters such as cyclones, flooding, droughts. So we need disaster resilience in our growth model, and that's why we'll discuss about coalition for disaster resilient infrastructure in the coming slides. Now the final pillar is about social security, which is about pensions and insurance penetration, especially for unorganized sector, farmers, traders, etc. Now the whole theme of ease of living is decisive upon three pillars, which is aspirational India, economic development and caring society, with a helping hand from governance reforms and the financial sector. Under aspirational India, we have three subtopics, which is agriculture, irrigation and rural development, wellness, water and sanitation, and the third pillar in aspirational India is education and skills. The second pillar about ease of living is about economic development, in which we have subparts industry, commerce and investment, infrastructure, and the new economy required for economic development in the future. And the third and final pillar is caring society, which talks about women and child welfare, social welfare, culture and tourism, environment and climate change. So coming to the themes of the economic survey, so it talks about aspirational India, which is in which all sections of society seek better standards of living. So it is also somewhere related to standards of living with access to health, education, better jobs, what we say, accessibility, opportunity, inclusive growth, etc. So access, opportunity, inclusivity. So these are main pillars of aspirational India. Now coming to the second point, which is economic development. So this is noted by the Prime Minister's exhaustion of Sabka Saath, Sabka Vikas, Sabka Vishwas. So this is a popular saying by the government for inclusive growth and inclusive development. And the third point is about caring society, which is both humane and compassionate, where Antyodaya is an article of faith. Antyodaya here means the bottom of the pyramid. So Antyodaya keyword is important for prelims, which is bottom of the pyramid. What are we doing for the least benefited or least capable or least understanding? We have to understand the needs of the bottom of the pyramid through caring society. And this, as we said, was supported by governance reform, which is corruption-free India, policy-driven, which is rule-based and good governance. And third is the stability of, or the second is the stability of the financial sector, especially as we have seen that recently there were some problems regarding NBFCs, liquidity in NBFCs, and also in the last 3-4 years we have seen a rising problem of cleaning up the banks, which is high NPAs, and we need to streamline the banking structure, especially in times of merger and acquisition. This will become important for pillars. Then next is, as we mentioned, Sabka Saath, Sabka Vishwas. So what is this all about? This theme is based on 6 pillars, which is first is preventive healthcare. As we know about health and wellness centers will be created, 1.5 lakh health and wellness centers will be created. Second is Ayushman Bharat, where we provide cashless treatment in impaneled hospitals up to 5 lakh rupees. The third is Ujjwala and clean power. For example, the kerosene subsidy has been phased out, and we have slowly introduced LPG, and we are trying to increase to 100%. We are reached around 96 to 97% now. So this is providing clean power, which is renewable energy and LPG, gas grid, or maybe increasing the share of natural gas as to 15% as terms of our energy requirement. Then fourth pillar is financial inclusion, credit support and pensions. Next is affordable housing, because we need to ensure housing for all by 2022. And last one is digital penetration, because we want to enable people to participate. It should be a two-way process. So for that, digital penetration is also important. Now coming to the theme of aspirational India, which we discuss under 3 themes, which is agriculture, irrigation and rural development. Second is wellness, water and sanitation. And third is education and skills. So coming to the first theme, which is agriculture. So as we all know that government has set a target of doubling farmers' income in 5 years. So under that, there are various themes which the budget picks up. The first one is enhancing credit to agriculture. See, the main problem in agriculture is about distress sale by farmers. So we need to provide agriculture credit at appropriate time to farmers to ensure that they are not facing any hardships or exploitative loan processes or etc. So this year we have set a target of rupees 15 lakh crore for agriculture credit, and also we have made a provision where all PM Kisan beneficiaries, which is cash transfer scheme for farmers, will be covered under the Kisan credit card, and also NABARD will take active steps in refinancing agriculture loans. Now coming to the second pillar, which is about monsoon dependence. See, more than 60% of the farmers are monsoon dependent. We have all heard this. So we need to do something for micro irrigation, drip irrigation, enhancing water connectivity. So therefore there will be measures taken up which are comprehensive for 100 water stressed districts. Now coming to the next pillar, which is blue economy. In the last 2 budgets, we have seen increasing focus on livestock and fisheries. So blue economy covers the fisheries and water related agronomy. So under this, first of all, we need to boost exports, which is we'll target 1 lakh crore of fishery exports by 2024-25. 200 lakh ton fish production will be targeted by 2022-23, and this will be facilitated by whom? Which is roughly 3,500 Sagar Mitras, and we'll try to create 500 fish farmer producer organizations or FPOs to involve youth in extension of fisheries and fisheries. At the same time, we'll try to include more algae, seaweed and cage culture to make it organized, to make it long lasting and sustainable. So we have a framework for development, management and conservation of machinery fisheries, so that it is done in a sustainable way. See, sustainability here involves that there should not be any bottom trawling. There should be proper recoup time given for fisheries so that there is not overfishing, because fisheries will also form common resources, and common resources have to be planned in a well established framework. So we have to also at the same time will develop 45,000 acres of aquaculture, which will be supported by various government schemes. Now coming to the next pillar, which is Kisan Rail. See, as agriculture is having perishable and very fragile communities which can spoil very fast, we need to develop cold chain infrastructure. So for that, government is enabling Kisan Rail, which will be established by Indian Railways and public-private partnership. And this will also be linked to National Cold Chain Supply Network. And how will this be done? This will be having facility of having freight trains which are refrigerated and attaching refrigerated coaches and express trains. Supporting Kisan Rail will be Kisan Udan as well, which will link up international and domestic routes for agriculture exports and agriculture marketing. And this will have a special emphasis on Northeast and tribal districts. See, in Northeast, as we know, it is famous for horticulture. So flowers from Northeast or Tripura, vegetables can directly fly into Bangalore or to Delhi to have better marketing channels and at the same time better price realization valuation for farmers. Now coming to the next pillar, which is one product, one district. So in horticulture, we have generally seen that a particular district specializes in a particular product. For example, Kolar is having tomatoes, or mangoes are there in Krishnagiri district, or Bihar is famous for lychees. So we need to develop clusters based on the particular product in that district to enable marketing, exports, validation, etc. Now coming to the next pillar, which is balanced use of fertilizer. See, this has been a key focus by introducing soil health card or by trying to maximize the yield of the farmers. That is having, so in this budget, we try to have a traditional organic thing, for example, zero budget natural farming, and we also try to innovate, for example, micro irrigation or fumigation, fertigation, or micro and macro fertilizers, etc. Then the next pillar is about organic farming, which is the first is Jaivik Kheti portal will be started, which is an online national organic produce market. Basically, if you're an organic farmer, you can go and buy your inputs from there and you can sell your produce there. And as we mentioned, zero budget natural farming is a key strategy under traditional organic farming. Next one is integrated farming systems for rain-fed areas. So as we know that 60% of the agriculture is rain dependent. So integrated farming here means that there will be farming plus livestock plus fisheries, etc. so that the farmer's income is not solely dependent on the monsoon. And there are multiple channels through which we can have a sustainable minimum level of income and minimum level of purchasing power can be maintained. And this can be done through multi-tier cropping, beekeeping, solar pumps, solar energy production in non-cropping seasons through PM Kusum scheme, etc. Now coming to PM Kusum scheme, in this there are three factors. First is 20 lakh farmers will be enabled with solar water pumps so that they don't have to depend on electricity or diesel for their pumps. So 20 lakh farmers will be given solar pumps. Then 15 lakh farmers will also be enabled to solarize their already grid connected pumps. So this will also reduce their dependence on the grid and it will help them to be self-sustainable and also reduce the cost of their inputs. And third is enable farmers to set up solar power generation capacity on their fallow or barrel land and sell it to the grid. So UPSC has previously asked about net metering also in this regard, where people can pay only the bill which is the difference between the purchase and the sold price, or the purchase units and the selling units, so which is called net metering. So that will also be enabled in this scheme. Then coming to the next one, which is storage of food grain, which is very important in today's context because the villagers or the farmers have to go for distress sale because they don't have capacity to store their own food grains. So in this matter, the budget has enabled SHGs or self-help groups to participate in grain bank creation through Mudra Yojana, and also the finance minister used the term Dhanya Lakshmi, that Graha Lakshmi or SHG women can also become Dhanya Lakshmi, which is having a position of village food security. So it will deepen village security, at the same time prevent distress sale by farmers in India. Now coming to the next pillar, which is NABARD. NABARD will, at the same time, we need to boost storage. So for that, we need to provide information about where is the storage located, where is the cold storage, where are the reefer van facilities which a farmer can take. So NABARD will geotag and map them so that the information is available in real time on the farmers portal. And at the same time, to develop this further, we have established a Warehouse Development and Regulatory Authority, which will provide viability gap funding VGF for warehouses at block level and taluk level, and FCI and Central Warehousing Corporation will try to enable this provision of VGF, your viability gap funding, so that we can increase storage for perishable commodities or grains or pulses, etc. And at the same time, this will enable your electronic National Warehouse Receipt System, which will be also integrated with eNAM. Now, National Warehouse Receipt System provides credit even without having security, because once the farmer harvests his crops, he can deposit the crops in a warehouse or a storage facility. He gets a storage receipt, and based on this receipt, the farmers can get a loan. So this will especially help our women farmers. Now coming to the next pillar, that the central government through the budget has provided some incentives for the states to implement various laws which were hindering agriculture development. The first is Model Agricultural Land Leasing Act, which enables land leasing to third parties. The second one is Agriculture Produce and Livestock Marketing, or what we say APMC Model Act, has to be implemented. And third is about contract farming, so that we can go for greater corporatization and we can improve the investment in farming, or what we say that gross fixed capital formation has to be increased in agriculture to improve its productivity. So all three measures will enable greater capital formation or more investment, in simple words, in agriculture. And this is the main point, that after 91 there has been slow investment in agriculture. That is the reason why industry and service sector have grown far ahead than agriculture. So if we implement these three laws properly, we can create an environment of conducive investment policies in agriculture in the state level. Now, second is about the last point is about livestock. So livestock, in this, the main problem is about milk processing capacity in India. So as we know, in the recent past, there has been demands of MSP, even for milk, especially in Maharashtra. So we need to create milk processing, such as Amul and Nandini and various cooperatives have to be enabled to double their milk processing capacity. So the target is to achieve 108 million tons from 53.5 million tons presently by 2025. And also a key factor in sustaining the growth of livestock is artificial insemination. So it has to be increased to 70% from the present level of 30%. And the main problem in milk is not actually the milk availability per se, but it is about, if you have more fodder or sustainable fodder resources, the milk production will also be nice, and the price of milk increases because fodder cost increases. So it's a cost push factor. So NREGA can be used to develop fodder farms, which will enable proper purchasing power and at the same time less input cost to farmers. And the next point is that we have to eliminate certain diseases such as foot and mouth disease, PPR, by 2025 in livestock farming. And last one is that Deen Dayal Antyodaya Yojana will be leveraged in development of 50 lakh households into 58 lakh SHGs for poverty alleviation in rural areas. So this will also be combined with the rural development strategy along with livestock, fisheries, SHGs for storage, mapping of warehouses, etc. Now coming to the next pillar under Aspirational India, which is wellness, water and sanitation. So under wellness, water and sanitation, the first is that Fit India movement was launched to fight non-communicable diseases such as cardiovascular problems or asthma or anything, so that people are more fit and they are able to withstand communicable diseases. Now, the first pillar under wellness, water, sanitation and is PM Jan Arogya Yojana, under which we have already impaneled 20,000 hospitals. Then next is that budget will provide viability gap funding for hospitals in public-private partnership mode. And under the first phase, those aspirational districts which have having no unpaneled hospitals will be covered, and this is also being done through the data so collected from Ayush scheme will be used for having models of machine learning AI to predict and prevent diseases in the future. The second step is that because we're expanding health capacity in India, we need to import a lot of health equipment or medical equipment. So the budget has proposed a 5% health cess on this equipment to give impetus to domestic medical equipment industry, and also these proceeds will be used for creating health infrastructure in the aspirational districts. The next pillar is Jan Aushadhi Kendra scheme in all districts by 2024. So Jan Aushadhi is nothing but a generic medicine scheme where medicines are made available to the people at a low cost. So this will ensure 2000 medicines being available by 2024 and 300 surgical items to be available in the shops by 2024 under Jan Aushadhi Yojana. Now coming to the next pillar, which is an important theme was announced, which was TB Harega, Desh Jitega. And this was a slogan given to end TB by 2025, and there is a comprehensive roadmap for this, DOTS therapy and drug-resistant TB and efforts to fight TB. So under the campaign TB Harega, Desh Jitega, we are planning to end TB by 2025. More than 6 lakh Anganwadi workers have been equipped with smartphones to collect data about immunization, MMR, IMR, nutrition, etc. The next pillar is that there will be a task force in suggesting ways to reduce maternal mortality rate and improve nutrition levels based on the feedback available from the Anganwadi workers. Because once we have collected the data, we have already reached a critical level of data, we are analyzing the data to recommend strategies to improve maternal mortality rate and nutrition levels at the ground level. The next pillar is Jal Jeevan Mission. So Jal Jeevan Mission is mainly for augmenting local water resources, recharging existing sources, and promoting water harvesting and desalination. So cities with million plus population, which is 10 lakh plus population, are encouraged to achieve objectives in the current year itself. Next is Swachh Bharat Mission. So under this, ODF or Open Defecation Free, ODF Plus is launched to sustain the ODF behavior. So it is all about behavioral change now to encourage people to continue to use the toilets and do the proper management of their waste. The second pillar under Swachh Bharat is liquid and grey water management. And third is solid waste collection, source segregation and processing of the waste. Now coming to the third pillar under Aspirational India, which is education and skills. So under this, first is a comprehensive new education policy has been proposed and it's under consideration for implementation, which will have emphasis on quality, strengthening the infrastructure, etc. The next pillar is that National Police University and National Forensic Science University has been proposed in the budget. Next is that degree level online courses by top 100 institutes in the National Institution Ranking Framework will be started so that there is deeper penetration of digital learning in India. The next pillar is about that many engineers who graduate, there will be given 1 year internship by the municipal corporations or urban local bodies to give them a practical experience about what is required in the field level. Next is medical colleges to be attached to existing district hospitals in PPP mode. So as we know that there are many district hospitals, but all of them don't have a medical college. So the government or the Niti Aayog has also proposed that a public-private partnership scheme where the medical college will be run by the private sector and the government will have its own hospital. So it will be a good mix of private sector investment and government experience or the government knowledge. So it will be a good teaching platform where the best in the government is matched with the best in the investment in technology so that we can have a robust health infrastructure and robust education of medical sciences in India. Now coming to bridge courses. So these bridge courses are designed to fulfill the gap for demand for teachers, nurses, paramedical staff and caregivers. Caregivers here means Anganwadi or old age. And the next is equivalence of skills. So we have to come up with a skills framework which will match the workforce and employer standards. So the bridge courses will help the existing workforce to match what is needed by the employers today. So 150 higher education institutes to embed apprenticeship or training programs in their degree and diplomas by 2021. And the last is that FDI and external commercial borrowings will be allowed in education sector. So this will give an impetus for investment in education sector in India. And for boosting Study in India program, which is a program for Asians, Africans and Latin Americans to come and study in India, a common exam which is called INSAT was proposed to streamline the process of study in India. Now coming to the next pillar, which is industry, commerce and investment. So under this, the first pillar is investment clearance cell. So till now we had e-BIS portal, but we have various problems at state level and central level. So to harmonize the entire process between center, state, etc. and local bodies, we will create an investment clearance cell which will provide end-to-end facilitation and support, and there will be a dedicated portal for this. The second pillar is that we'll create 5 new smart cities. Smart cities such as Dholera has been created near Ahmedabad, Gift City. So similarly, more smart cities are needed to promote commerce, industry and investment. The scheme will be to encourage manufacture. We'll be coming up with a scheme to encourage manufacture of mobile phones, electronic equipment and semiconductor packaging, and also medical devices has been proposed in the budget. The next theme is that we'll create a national technical textile mission which will run for 4 years, and this will aim to position India as a global leader in technical textiles. So technical textiles are nothing but specialized clothing such as fire protecting suits, or as we know today about coronavirus, it is about personal protective equipment, etc. Then there will be NIRVIC scheme. NIRVIC scheme will encompass the existing benefits under MEIS and SEIS, which is merchandise export from India scheme and service export from India scheme. So NIRVIC scheme will boost export from India. At the same time, it will be WTO compliant. So the main thing is to make India WTO compliant. There is a proposal for a NIRVIC scheme which will provide for higher export credit, insurance coverage, reduction in premium for small exporters, and the last one, which is very important, which is simplified procedures for claim settlement. Then GEM portal, which is government e-marketplace, the potential this year has been targeted at rupees 3 lakh crore, and we will encourage more and more small scale industry, MSMEs, women entrepreneurs to participate on this portal. Then there will be scheme for revision of duties and taxes on exported products, which is, see, a lot of duties and GST, for example, GST refunds was a problem for exports. See, at the same time, the exporters pay a lot of taxes at the local level, which is called anti-tax or stamp duties, etc., which were not reimbursed to the exports. So by enabling a scheme for revision of duties and taxes on exported products, the government of India aims to make exports competitive vis-a-vis other countries. Now, exporters to be digitally refunded duties and taxes levied at central, state and local levels, which are currently not exempted. So similarly, like as you mentioned, the scheme will be launched and it will all be done digitally, so that exports don't get delayed refunds but timely refunds. It is available on time and they can track it on a real-time basis. Then so this scheme will be anchored by Exim Bank, which is Export Import Bank of India, and SIDBI for MSMEs. And the last is that for exports, it is very important to maintain some quality standards from India. So for this, all ministries, I repeat, all ministries will issue quality orders in line with zero defect, zero effect. Now coming to the next pillar, which is infrastructure. Under infrastructure, first is that we'll plan to spend 100 lakh crore in the next 5 years to boost job creation, infrastructure, physical quality of life, and this will be done through the National Infrastructure Pipeline. So the Finance Minister has also said that 100 lakh crore is the starting point and more projects would be added gradually. So this might go up to 105 lakh crore in the near future. At the same time, the logistics cost in India is around 12 to 13% compared to 6 to 7% in developed markets, 6% in China, etc. So for this, we need to streamline the logistics. So therefore, we plan to launch a national logistics policy which will provide clarity on the role of the center, state, and local bodies in movement of trucks, about storage, hub and spoke models, etc. It will be a single window providing e-logistics where a consignor can simply go online, find a truck, register the truck, load all the documents, and there will be no problem. There will be end-to-end logistic provision from exports, shipping, railways, roadways, etc. And also there will be focus on employment, MSMEs, and skill development under this policy. As we said, National Skill Development Agency will give a thrust to skills required for infrastructure. A common example is welding skills. For example, when we make roads and bridges, we need trained welders. So welding as a skill will be developed by National Skill Development Agency, or there will be a thrust on similar skills which are required for infrastructure and job creation in infrastructure and construction sector. Separately, there will be a facility for project preparation because we see young engineers, management graduate and economists from universities. They're having good technical knowledge, but by giving a proper facility of project preparation, we'll be having seamless planning for the future, and there will be no problems in project planning, misestimation, etc. Infrastructure agencies to involve youth in startups because startups are doing many good things now. So probably we can learn from startups with innovation, and we can shorten the process of project preparation, planning, and also have better tools using big data, AI, machine learning to have good projects and timely projects implementation in India. Now coming to the next pillar, which is under infrastructure, what is the main goal? First is accelerated development of highways. Next is toll model to be used in roads for asset monetization. Next is solar power on rail land alongside railway tracks. So as we know, the railways has a lot of land along the tracks. So solar panels can be set up along the railway tracks to generate solar power. Next is station redevelopment and 150 trains in public-private partnership. Now recently IRCTC started running some trains, and we need to leverage that model. So this will reduce the capital required by railways for investment. So it will also involve private sector running the trains, but railways will have operational control. Operational control is all safety measures will be set up by the railways itself. The next is Tejas trains to connect iconic tourist spots. Next is high-speed rail, as we know about the bullet train project between Mumbai and Ahmedabad. Next is Bangalore Suburban Railway. Wi-Fi to be enabled at all the railway stations. We are planning to reduce accidents by removing the unmanned crossings. So we have already eliminated the unmanned crossings from the broad gauge network. So we need to expand the same to zero unmanned crossings in India to prevent accidents between railway and other intrusions. Next is your track electrification. We have made a progressive step to move towards 100% electrification of railways in India, and at the same time trying to phase out all the diesel engines as well. Now the next pillar is, or continuing infrastructure, will corporatize at least one port and list it in the market. Corporatization will give more autonomy to the ports. So autonomy sometimes, or most of the times, as we look at the PSUs, because of autonomy, they have shown increased technology, increased adoption of profitability, management skills, etc. So it gives them freedom to hire, fire, and also to develop their land available with them. Next is global benchmarks would be established for ports to follow to make India a very good prospect for logistics and transshipment. Artha Ganga, or economic activities along rivers. This is a program launched to develop the inland waterways and promote economic activities such as ports, or what we say inland ports, dry docks, etc. 100 airports to be developed by 2024 under UDAN scheme or regional connectivity scheme. Next is smart metering, which is electricity meters will be prepaid and all of them will enable in reducing the transmission and distribution losses. So T&D losses, which are very high presently in India. Next is reforms will be carried out in DISCOMs or distribution companies, because DISCOMs are running huge losses. So despite Uday scheme, we need more reforms in DISCOMs to enable less NPAs and timely payment in electricity sector. And to increase the share of gas, which is we are targeting 15% share in gas as total of energy requirement in India through expansion of the national gas grid through pipelines of gas, natural gas, LPG, etc. And to enable proper market for gas will enable price discovery and ease of transaction for the gas market in India. Now coming to the next pillar, which is new economy, or what is the new economy, or what is the economy for future requirement. How can India be ahead today for tomorrow? So under this, the first pillar is policy to enable private sector to build data center parks in India. So as we know, there is a progressive policy to store all the data in India. So for that, we need proper data center parks to be established. So the policy will be enacted to enable private sector to build these data centers in India. Next is fiber to the home, which is under BharatNet, or we'll try to connect 1 lakh gram panchayats. 1 lakh gram panchayats under BharatNet or using the National Optical Fiber Network. There will be a mission on quantum technologies and applications. As we have seen recently, Google made huge jump in quantum technologies, which is increasing computing power and also increasing your capacity to analyze big data, application machine learning, IoT, etc. And lastly, to enable all this, we need a proper policy for startups, such as digital platform for seamless application of intellectual properties, such as registering patents, registering geographical indicators, etc. There will be some knowledge translation clusters set up. For example, we have seen that ISRO transfers some technology, DRDO transfers some technology which is for public purpose. So this can also go a long way in medical research, such as in COVID-19. We have seen that the knowledge translation, if it is nice, if it is open source, there is a platform, then the development of vaccine would be much faster. The next is test beds and small scale manufacturing facilities. So test bed is nothing but development of prototypes or developing of scale models for a larger purpose, so that we prove the concept before going to a mass scale. The next one is mapping India's genetic landscape. This will help in promoting pharmaceutical research and also promoting healthcare research, healthcare startups in India. So this will be done by launching two new national level science schemes to map India's genome. And last not the least is the early life funding, which will be some program to give seed funding. Seed funding is initial support funding to support their idea or develop their idea at an early startup stage, so that startups are enabled to take or not shy away from risk. Now coming to the next pillar, which is culture and tourism. So under this, we'll be coming up with renovation and recuration of 4 museums. Under this, the first one is recuration of Indian Museum in Kolkata. Second one, Museum on Numismatics and Trade in Old Mint Building in Kolkata again. Third is Tribal Museum will be established in Ranchi in Jharkhand. And last, Maritime Museum at Lothal. As we know, in Harappa, Lothal was a port, and there have been many evidences of maritime activity in Lothal. So we plan to develop a maritime museum at Lothal. And state plans will be established and will be providing grants for identified destinations to boost this further. Now coming to the pillar of caring society. So under caring society, we focus on women and child development, social welfare, culture and tourism. So starting with women and child, first of all, girls at motherhood. So till now, the age of marriage for women is 18 and age for marriage for males is 21. So the finance minister proposed a task force which will suggest the suitable age for marriage and motherhood, which is legally be tenable in India, to suggest various changing dynamics which have happened in India in the present context, and to suggest suitable legal measures to be taken to increase or decrease or to maintain the age of women at motherhood and age of marriage for girls. Next is no manual cleaning of septic tanks would be allowed. All India Institute of Heritage and Conservation under Ministry of Culture proposed with the status of deemed university to promote culture and tourism. 5 archaeological sites as iconic sites, which is will develop some iconic destinations for archaeology such as Rakhi Gadi in Haryana, Hastinapur in UP, Shiva Sagar in Assam, Dholavira in Gujarat, Adi Chanaluru in Tamil Nadu. Also in caring society, there is visible air pollution in most of our cities, and air pollution is a primary cause for many premature deaths in India. So there is a proposal to close all old thermal power plants where carbon emissions are above preset norms. And there will be simultaneously we'll launch a clean air plan for million plus cities in India, especially we have seen the problem of stubble burning in Delhi or air pollution in Bangalore, etc. At the same time, India was fortunate to host a event which enabled Coalition for Disaster Relief Infrastructure with a secretariat in Delhi. So this is the second such initiative taken by India after the International Solar Alliance. Now coming to the governance part, first reform under this is taxpayer charter. So see, by a charter, what do we understand by a charter? A charter is a body of knowledge which suggests that who is responsible and how much time, what is the duty of the taxpayer, what is the duty of the tax department, what should be the compensation criteria, or in other words, I would call it makes it smart, which is simple, managerial, accountable, reliable, and transparent. The second is that we'll decriminalize Companies Act. So under this, there were many issues such as corporate social responsibility, not filing the papers or legal requirements of meetings in time. So all these were criminal offenses under Companies Act. So what the Companies Act changes through this budget is that we'll try to mitigate all the criminal activities into civil offenses so that there is no criminal proceedings against the companies. The next big pillar is National Recruitment Agency. See, as we know, there are various exams for Group C and Group B. So an aspirant is forced to give many exams such as banking or SSC separately. He has to appear for multiple tests at multiple centers. So National Recruitment Agency has been proposed with a common eligibility test in the budget. And to enable this, there will be a test center in every district, which will be computerized testing. And this will be in particular the government will support establishment of such centers in aspirational districts. And last is mechanization for direct recruitment to tribunals and specialized bodies. And at the same time, we'll make some changes in the Contract Act so that there is no problem in payments, settlements, etc. At the same time, we'll launch a national policy on official statistics that, as we all know, that in the last 2 years, there have been various controversies regarding national income, statistics, employment, etc. So national policy on official statistics, which will leverage artificial intelligence, modernized data collection, integrated information portal, timely dissemination of information, etc. has to be promoted. And this year is a fortunate year. We have started beginning preparation to host G20 presidency in India by 2022. Also in the governance reform, a special emphasis has been placed on development of Northeast and development of UTs of Jammu Kashmir and Ladakh for their progress and their integration and their timely development as per broader policy of Sabka Saath, Sabka Vishwas. Now coming to the financial sector, under this, the main problem with confidence of financial sector was about a problem of that is the money of depositors safe. So till now, deposit insurance was having a limit of 1 lakh rupees per depositor. So in the budget, we made a provision to increase this deposit insurance cover to rupees 5 lakh. And this 5 lakh deposit insurance will also cover your urban cooperative banks. So under urban cooperative banks, as the budget made a provision to shift the regulation of cooperative banks effectively to RBI. So governance and oversight will be shifted to RBI for better management of the cooperative banks in India, which will enable access to capital, professionalism, etc. Then the next pillar under financial sector is that government has made a proposal to sell its remaining stake in IDBI Bank. So IDBI Bank, as we know, was sold to LIC, but government maintains some control. So government wants to make IDBI Bank into a private bank. Next is that seeing the nudge economy and the behavioral economy, there has to be a provision for auto enrollment for universal pension coverage. So if somebody wants to opt out, they have to opt out. So, or in other words, there is auto enroll or auto selection of universal pension coverage in all the government schemes. So to enable this, we need reforms in Pension Fund Development Authority. So there will be separation of NPS trust for government employees from PFRDA. There will be establishment of pension trust by employees other than government as well. Then the Factors Act, which is to enable NBFC to credit MSMEs through TREDS. TREDS is Trade Receivables Electronic Discounting System. Also to enable subordinate debt for MSMEs, which is Credit Guarantee Scheme for MSMEs. And the debt restructuring for MSMEs will continue for one more year, which is March 31st, 2021, so that MSMEs are enabled with proper regulation and they are mitigated the impact of implementation of demonetization, GST, etc. App-based invoicing for MSME will be introduced to get over their working capital shortages. And the last point is that we'll try for export promotion, especially by MSMEs. In financial sector further, that we know there is huge crowding out by the government in terms of high fiscal deficit, where crowding out means inability for MSMEs and agriculture and small borrowers to enable access to credit. So to enable this, the government has proposed to open specified categories of government securities for non-resident investors. Now these specified categories include 5-year government bonds, 10-year government bonds, etc. Then there is an important concept which is called bilateral netting. Bilateral netting is that suppose you issue a check and you are having a bank, say your bank is SBI and my bank is Canara Bank. So if SBI issues a check to Canara Bank, so Canara Bank and Canara Bank issue the check to, if I issue a check to you which is Canara Bank check is issued to SBI, both of them have to keep some amount reserved for until maturity of that check or till the check is encashed. So bilateral netting will enable both of them to free up capital because it will be real-time settlement. They don't need to keep a reserve. So this will save tier 1 and tier 2 capital of the banks and make more capital available. They don't have to wait 15 days to settle the transaction and free up the capital. So bilateral netting as a provision has been introduced in the budget documents. Next is equity support to infrastructure finance companies and subsidiaries of National Infrastructure Investment Fund to enable higher spending in infrastructure and so that equity support will boost their capital. It will enable them to further raise capital from the markets using long-term bonds, debentures, NCDs, share market. The next pillar is that IFSC and GIFT City, this is International Financial Service Center, will get a autonomous body to regulate it, comprising members from SEBI, RBI, IRDA, PFRDA, and also an international bullion exchange would be set up in IFSC or GIFT City near Ahmedabad. The next pillar is that government will try to sell its stake in LIC as part of its disinvestment program. Now coming to fiscal management. Under fiscal management, first of all, the recommendation of 15th Finance Commission will be followed up from this year, and they have given reference for 2020-2021, and separately they will be giving proper full recommendations for the 5 years starting from 21. Coming to the next pillar, the Finance Commission has suggested a GST compensation fund where the states have to be adequately compensated for the revenue loss as part of compensation cess, and there should be no delay in payment, and the compensation has to be fully paid for 16-17 and 17-18. Next is that the Finance Commission has suggested the overhaul of central sponsored scheme and central sector schemes to align them to emerging socio-economic needs and also to ensure that the scarce public resources are spent optimally. Next, that this year the Finance Commission has suggested, and also the budget has suggested, to initiate a trigger mechanism which allows for flexibility of 0.5% in fiscal deficit in case of emergency or in case of extreme fiscal situation. So therefore the fiscal deficit has been extended to 3.8% for this year and 3.5% for next year. So, or in other ways, trigger mechanism gives you the flexibility to fight unforeseen economic challenges in the Indian economy and also to provide stimulus measures. At the same time, it also talks for fiscal prudence, which is 0.5% below target, which is 2.5% of fiscal deficit if the economy is doing very well. So this is what we are talking about, that the trigger mechanism will enabling of the path to return to fiscal deficit targets as defined under medium-term fiscal policy strategy statement, and this return path is also clearly defined in case of trigger mechanism whenever it is invoked. So this budget in this year devotes 21% of total expenditure to capital expenditure, which is the highest ever allocation so far. Now coming to various tax reforms, first of all, there's a distinction between new tax regime and old tax regime, where the new tax regime talks about removal of all exemption and making the tax filing process much simpler and more user friendly with pre-filled tax reforms. And this enables a common man to not approach any CA or tax professional and you can file your tax yourself, because all the income tax forms will be pre-filled based on the data populated from your KYC, from your bank, insurance companies, mutual funds, etc. An important decision this year has been to remove the dividend distribution tax. Dividend distribution tax has been shifted to the classical system, where the dividend is taxed in the hand of the receiver. So this will attract more foreign investment, because FIIs were having double jeopardy of tax. They were supposed to pay DDT in India and income tax in their home nations. So now they'll be only subject to your corporate tax or income tax in their home destinations. Then there will be parity between cooperative and corporate sector. 100% tax exemption for sovereign wealth funds investing in infrastructure and priority sectors. Now this has been given to promote investment in toll operate toll infrastructure, national infrastructure pipeline, etc. So that sovereign wealth funds, which are wealth funds of foreign countries, enjoy 100% tax exemption, and we need this money for infrastructure development as a stimulus measure in India. Then there is a facility for instant PAN through Aadhaar. That means if you file your income tax returns using Aadhaar card, PAN card will be issued to you automatically. Then Vivad Se Vishwas scheme has been launched to cover up for direct tax litigation. So if there is any pending tax dispute in the country regarding direct tax, that is income tax or corporate tax, one can avail of Vivad Se Vishwas scheme and not pay interest and penalty and just pay the nominal amount, so that there is end of litigation in the tax system in India. Then there has been launched from October 1st faceless appeals, where the income tax department will not talk to you face to face and all communication has been done online. And new GST regime will take place from 1st April 2020, which is having e-invoicing, simpler return filing process, etc. to make it easier for a taxpayer. And this new GST tax regime will also use dynamic QR system. And lastly, there has been a lot of leakages in GST regarding fake invoices. So we need to cover up this leakage using Aadhaar based verification of taxpayers to enable proper implementation of both GST, direct taxes, etc. And last is that there will be issuance of unique registration number to all charity institutions. So that section 80C, as we know that if you donate something under section 80C and especially to charity institutions, it is tax exempt. So it will be easy for compliance of tax in India. Now one can have a look at the existing rates and the new rates in the slides. Now coming to the strategy or the tip for today is, where do candidates make mistakes in attempting economic questions? So we have generally seen that economic questions are fairly simple, and what happens is the candidate tends to go wrong when he overthinks or when he does deep thinking. For example, when one goes from first step to second step and second step to third step, usually one tends to make a mistake. The economic questions are generally one step in nature. For example, suppose RBI decreases the CRR, so it will increase money supply. That is the first step. Second step is, because it will increase money supply, there will be increase in demand. Because there will be increase in demand, there will be inflation. Because there is inflation, there will be more government expenditure. Because there will be more government expenditure, there might be more fiscal deficit. This is what I call overthinking. What was required is only the first step, that when CRR decreases, that means money supply goes up, and that is end of story. So we have to focus only on the first step and not on the second and third and fourth. We cannot keep on going on. For example, let's take an example of a question. In the context of India, which of the following factors contribute to reduce the risk of a currency crisis? So currency crisis is nothing but a foreign exchange crisis, or we can say in simple terms that whenever India faces a shortage of currency, there will be a currency crisis in India. So whatever activity gets foreign exchange to the country will help in preventing or reducing the risk for currency crisis, right? So the first one, the foreign currency earnings of India's IT sector, that will definitely reduce the currency crisis because there will be inflow of dollars to India. Coming to the third point, remittances from Indians abroad, even this will get money to India, so this will also reduce the risk of a currency crisis. But if we go for second point, which is increasing the government expenditure, so if we increase government expenditure, we might start to think that if we increase government expenditure, there will be more services and goods available in India, and we might not import many things, and that will also reduce the risk of currency crisis. This is what we call overthinking. So if you do overthinking, you will tend to go for the option 1, 2 and 3. But in this case, you will get it wrong, because as we said, we have to just go for the first step. Increasing government expenditure in the first step might just feel that fiscal deficit might increase, or it might lead to some stimulus. But if we do overthinking, we can reach any answer. So it will be very confusing for the exam. And to keep it simple, 1 and 3 would fit as a first step itself. Thank you.